through the air, glorious, and they stay like that for a very long time. But sooner or later, after a very long time, this world begins to expand again. At a time of expansion, the beings from the Brahma world, having passed away from there, are mostly reborn in this world, and here they dwell, mind-made, feeding on delight, self-luminous, moving through the air, and glorious. And they stay like that for a very long time. At that time, there was just one mass of water, and all was darkness, blinding darkness. Neither moon nor sun appeared. No constellations or stars appeared. Night and day were not distinguished, nor months and fortnights. No years or seasons, no male and female. Beings reckoned just as beings. And sooner or later, after a very long time, savory earth spread itself over the waters where those beings were. It looked just like the skin that forms itself over hot milk as it cools. It was endowed with color, smell, and taste. It was the color of fine ghee or butter, and it was very sweet, like pure wild honey. Then some being of a greedy nature said, "I say, what can this be?" And they tasted the savory earth on their finger. In so doing, it became taken with the flavor, and craving arose. Then other beings, taking their cue from that one, also tasted the stuff with their fingers. They too were taken with the flavor, and craving arose in them. So they set to with their hands, breaking off pieces of the stuff in order to eat it. And the result of this was that their self-luminance disappeared. And as a result of the disappearance of their self-luminance, the moon and the sun appeared, night and day were distinguished, months and fortnights appeared, and the year and its seasons. To that extent, the world re-evolved. And those beings continued for a very long time, feasting on savory earth, feeding on it, and being nourished by it. And as they did so, their bodies became coarser, and difference in looks developed among them. Some beings became good-looking, others ugly, and the good-looking ones despised the others, saying, "We're better looking than you are." And because they became arrogant and conceited about their looks, the savory earth disappeared. At this they came together and lamented, crying, "Oh, that flavor, oh, that flavor." And so nowadays when people say, "Oh, that flavor," when they get something nice, they're repeating an ancient saying without even realizing it. And then, when the savory earth had disappeared, a fungus cropped up in the manner of a mushroom. It was of a good color, smell, and taste. It was the color of fine ghee or butter, and it was very sweet, like pure wild honey. And those beings set to and ate the fungus, and this lasted for a very long time. And as they continued to feed on the fungus, so their bodies became coarser still, and the difference in their looks increased still more. And the good-looking ones despised the others, and because they became arrogant and conceited about their looks, the sweet fungus disappeared. Next creepers appeared, shooting up like bamboo, and they too were very sweet, like pure wild honey. And those beings set to and fed on those creepers, and as they did so, their bodies became even coarser, and the difference in their looks increased still more. And they became still more arrogant, and so the creepers disappeared too. At this they came together and lamented, crying, "Alas, our creeper's gone, what have we lost?" And so now today, when people on being asked why they are upset say, "Oh, we have lost something," they're repeating an ancient saying without realizing it. And then, after the creepers had disappeared, rice appeared in open spaces, free from powder and from husks, fragrant and clean-grained. And what they had taken in the evening for supper had grown again and was ripe in the morning, and what they had taken in the morning for breakfast was ripe by the evening, with no sign of reaping. And these beings set to and fed on this rice, and this lasted for a very long time, and as they did so, their bodies became coarser still, and the difference in their looks became even greater. And the females developed female sex organs, and the males developed male organs, and the women became excessively preoccupied with men, and the men with women. Owing to this excessive preoccupation with each other, passion aroused, and their bodies burned with lust. And later, because of this burning, they indulged in sexual activity. But those who saw them indulging threw dust, ashes, or cow dung on them, crying, "Die, you filthy beast! How can one being do such things to another?" Just as today, in some districts, when a daughter-in-law is led out, some people throw dirt at her, some ashes and some cow dung, without realizing that they are repeating an ancient observance. What was considered bad form in those days is now considered good form. And those beings who in those days indulged in sex were not allowed into a village or a town for 1 or 2 months. Accordingly, those who indulged for an excessively long period in such immoral practices began to build themselves dwellings so as to indulge under cover. Now it occurred to one of those beings who was inclined to laziness, well now, why should I be bothered to gather rice in the evening for supper and in the morning for breakfast? Why shouldn't I gather it all at once for both meals? And he did so. Then another one came to him and said, come on, let's go rice gathering. No need, my friend. I've gathered up enough for both meals. Then the other, following his example, gathered enough rice for 2 days at a time, saying, that should be about enough. Then another being came and said to that second one, come on, let's go rice gathering. No need, my friend. I've gathered enough for 2 days. And it continued until they gathered enough for 8 days. However, when those beings made a store of rice and lived on that, husk powder and husk began to envelop the grain. And where it was reaped, it did not grow again, and the cut place showed, and the rice grew in separate clusters. And when those beings came together lamenting, wicked ways have become rife among us. At first we were mind-made, feeding on delight, but now the rice grows in separate clusters. So now let us divide the rice into fields with boundaries. And they did so. Then one greedy-natured being, whilst watching over his own plot, took another plot that was not given to him, and enjoyed the fruits of it. So they seized hold of him and said, you've done a wicked thing taking another's plot like that. Don't ever do such a thing again. I won't, he said, but he did the same thing a second time and a third time. Again he was seized and rebuked, and some hit him with their fists, and some with stones, and some with sticks. And in this way, taking what was not given, and censoring, and lying, and punishment took their origin. Then those beings came together and lamented the arising of these evil things among them, taking what was not given, censoring, lying, and punishment. And they thought, suppose we were to appoint a certain being who would show anger where anger was due, who would censor those who deserved it, and banish those who deserved banishment, and in return we would grant him a share of the rice. So they went to the one among them who was the handsomest, the best looking, and the most pleasant and capable, and asked him to do this for them in return for a share of the rice, and he agreed. I'm going to finish there. It's not the end of the sutta. But anyway, I'm not going to say too much about it. I think you get the gist. And so we see that there isn't the case when our defilements don't do harm. At the very least, we suffer, and probably others suffer too. And the medicine is what the Buddha called the beautiful mental factors, which is this group of mental factors that always co-arise. So when one of the mental factors is present, all of the other mental factors come along with it. And so they are, in brief, faith, which is the conviction that this is good, this is goodness. Faith. Mindfulness, that I think we are all familiar with what it means. Non-greed, non-hatred, morality, balance, tranquility, lightness, softness, flexibility, uprightness, which is a quality like authenticity, not being crooked in our ways, truthfulness. And then proficiency, which means that there's a skill in maintaining that beautiful group. And that group of beautiful mental factors is the foundation for our wisdom to also arise, our compassion to also arise, and our capacity to rejoice for others. And this is our medicine in building a beautiful world internally and also a beautiful world externally. So as I said, these mental factors, they co-arise. And so if we are developing one of them, all of the others are there automatically. It's a beautiful, often overlooked teaching of the Buddha. So if we're being generous, we don't need to make any wish. May my mindfulness improve. It will improve. If we are telling the truth, we don't need to make any wish. May I have more loving kindness. We will have more loving kindness automatically. It is the natural result. If we're practicing loving kindness, we don't need to make any wish. May I become more generous. It will happen automatically. If we're cultivating tranquility, we don't need to make any wish. May my morality improve. It will happen automatically. And so on. And so let's take let's take half an hour. And I invite you all to meditate in whatever way is familiar to you, in whatever way you like. And roughly every 5 minutes, I will just drop in one of these mental factors. I will just say the word. And I invite you all, as you meditate in your normal way, see if you can notice that quality of mind there present. See if you can become familiar with it. Because when we become familiar with these qualities of mind, we can use them to empower ourselves, to empower our action. We can also access them more readily when we build familiarity with them. What I find sometimes teaching meditation is we only really become familiar with 2 or 3, and mindfulness, non-hatred, which is our metta, maybe non-greed, but let's see if we can touch in with more of them. So I'm always shy to interrupt people's meditation, so please forgive me in advance for speaking in your meditation. I'm going to keep it to just like one word every few minutes, and enjoy your sit. So I'll start with an easy one. Let's see if we can bring our attention to mindfulness as we continue our practice. Now let's see if we can find non-greed. This is the quality of mind that isn't clinging to anything, isn't grasping at anything. Let's see if we can find non-hatred. This is the mind that is accepting, non-aversive, welcoming. See if we can find morality. This is the quality of mind that shrinks away or retracts from the defilements and that doesn't want to do harm. And let's see if we can find faith. Faith is the quality of mind that knows that this is good, knows that this is Dharma, knows that this is the right way. Let's see if we can find balance. This is the quality of mind that isn't all the time being pulled into wanting something, not liking something, but it's steady and centered. Let's see if we can find tranquility. And let's see if we can find lightness, the mind that is unburdened. And let's see if we can find softness of mind. And let's see if we can find flexibility. This is the quality of mind that can turn itself to the task at hand, that does what it's told. Let's see if we can find uprightness. This is the quality of mind that is straight and true, authentic. Last one is wisdom, the quality of mind that's seeing clearly. Let's see if we can notice that. And we'll just take a final 5 minutes to continue our meditation with an awareness of that whole group that we've just seen one by one. See if we can bring in an awareness of all of them together as we continue to focus on our meditation object. And I will finish our sitting in about 5 minutes with a ding. Ding. Give us a moment to open our eyes and come back together. So, before we go into a discussion about society I'd be curious to know, how was that meditation for you all? What did you notice as you brought your attention to those beautiful qualities of mind? Does anyone want to share? Yeah, go for it, Gwen.
One thing I noticed, can you hear me?
Yes.
I noticed that um, like in trying to see them, I would oftentimes be kind of like reflecting on like what had just arisen rather than looking at what was arising in the moment. Um, and then there was like a lot of like kind of thinking and like that kind of like conceptual processing of them. I was like, oh, I don't think this is quite, you know, I don't think this is quite like really like observing them as they're arising. It was different, and so it was really hard to just kind of like stay really present. Um, and so so that was what I noticed.
Yeah. Did anybody else have a similar experience? No, just you, Gwen. um, yeah, I was going to say, I can't hear you, Aaron.
Oh, I had kind of the opposite, where I was expecting it to be super conceptual and abstract, and I was like, oh, it's right there. Like there's mindfulness. Kind of like I guess I was surprised that they kind of felt like real tangible aspects of my experience, sort of. I was like, maybe that's what's supposed to happen. I don't know.
Yeah, so there's something that Gwen said, actually both of you, that's very resonant of a practice that we do called Namakamatana, which is, it's part of Namarupa Paricheda Jnana, which is the first Vipassana Jnana, the first level of Vipassana, where when we bring our attention to mind, the present moment is the moment that's doing the knowing. And so we can only know the mind that's past. Does that make sense? It can be very recently past, but we can only know the mind that's past. As we practice more and more, we develop a skill for getting that very recent and not going off into a search. But there's something that's very, like, I think you've got an instinct for that, Gwen. When we pay attention to the breath, for example, or any other object, we can know it now. But with the mind, we can't. And then what Aaron said, yeah, when I started doing these practices of Namakamatana, Rupa Kamatana, is when I started to get a sense that the Abhidharma is true. It is not just, I don't know, scholarly theorizing, but it's actually practically, observably true. Did anybody else have a different experience of being with those beautiful mental factors?
What happened is examples came up. So examples that exemplified and examples that ran contrary to the factors. So it was kind of like a review that came up every once in a while. And then there was like a felt sense of each quality, especially at the end. I just kind of like felt into the whole, felt sense of the entirety of it. Yeah. So these are the beautiful mental qualities from the Abhidhamma, right? Because I've heard them translated, like, if that's right, a little bit differently sometimes. I guess I was thinking more of the technical language. I really appreciate your translation of them. It seemed a little more practical and, yeah, and down to earth as
Yeah,
well.
translation always a bit of a controversial issue. In the Abhidharma, we have some, I think, a little bit unnecessary technical things going on. So, for example, they say lightness, there is two types. there's lightness of consciousness and there's lightness of the other mental factors, but in reality, lightness is lightness, and similar for some of the others. But yeah, the basic gist is the same.
Like wieldy, I think is one interpretation of one of those, and that's just the word that just doesn't cross everybody's vocabulary these days. So I mean, it's good to
Yeah.
have arcane understanding of some language, but also practical as well, right?
This question comes up far too much in our tradition. What's wieldiness? What does it mean?
I think of like proficiency with the sword. If you can wield something, you know how to use it well. I don't know though.
Actually, proficiency is a different one. And my teacher once gave this example when we ask what's the difference between wieldiness and proficiency. It's kamanyata and paganyata. He gave a really beautiful example where if you imagine a piano player, wieldiness is their fingers can move freely around the keys, and proficiency is because of practice, they play it correct. They're two different types of skillfulness.
Beautiful. And then if we could circle back after this, possibly to um, discussing what you read, quick observations, but I'll hold off.
Yeah, we'll get there. Kendall, Evelyn, what did you notice as you were doing this meditation? Easy or difficult?
I just I feel like it kind of just bounced off like little and like I don't know.
Difficult to settle the mind.
What did
Is that
say?
what you mean? Difficult to settle the mind.
Yeah, I guess a little hazy. Just didn't really like sink in, I guess.
Yeah. So this meditation is the easiest to do when the mind is settled on meditation object. If we have the mind that is already quite distracted, then actually the beautiful mental factors won't be there much. Evelyn, how about you? I can't hear you, Evelyn. Can everybody else hear? You're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great. I found myself searching for the feeling of each beautiful mental factor and feeling as if they are all connected. So instead of distinct separations, sort of going into what does mindfulness feel like right now? What does lightness feel like? What does balance feel like? And noticing how they feel similar. Yeah.
Yeah. I sometimes do, like when I have a day-long workshop or when I have people in person, I do these mental factors in a really embodied way with their opposites. And when we get people to embody greed, for example, or hatred, they all come out really distinct. You know, greed and hatred and jealousy and fear, they're all very different in the body. They have their own flavor. But when we get people to embody the beautiful mental factors, they all look the same. They have a similar flavor.
I was curious about I noticed you said each mental factor and then a little word or phrase or like definition. And I was curious whether those were sort of definitions that you were bringing, or whether those were technical.
So I didn't give you the translation, but no, so like I reworded a little bit, but it's also from the Abhidharma. So we can find in the Abhidharma for each mental factor, for every state actually, is lakkhana rasa. And so this is its characteristic and its function. And we also have its manifestation, its proximate cause, but basically it has a description of each state. And so I gave like a more colloquial version of that.
Except for tranquility.
Except for tranquility, well observed, Josh. Yeah, I thought that one speaks for itself. So, yeah, Josh already requested to circle back round to this sutta, and I want to bring in a discussion about how these mental factors do and don't interact with the world at large, just to keep us on theme. Just as a sort of a prompting question, I'm happy for this discussion to go where it goes, but as a prompting question, I'm interested to know what stands in the way of us being with these mental factors in the world, and what helps us.
Well, just generally, mindfulness. We can never have too much mindfulness, especially when that's interpreted as remembering. So if we do have somewhat of proficiency in these, all it takes is to remember to bring these to mind. I mean, that's the biggest thing that comes to mind right now.
But to push you a little further, Josh, so what external factors give rise to mindfulness, and what external factors make it really difficult for mindfulness to arise?
That's a profound question, actually. If I knew, just interpreting mindfulness as remembering, if I knew how the memory process worked, I mean, you could probably be a billionaire, but then apply that to individuals and then different causes and conditions and environments, and then you have a whole complex matrix of things that are ebbing and flowing and arising and passing away. So, in generalities, I don't know. So yes, I want to throw that back to you, Beth, please.
Yeah, so I don't want to answer the question because I want to leave it to a discussion, but I'll just say, for example, so I've got like 10 years of monastic practice, and I know what it's like to meditate deeply, and I know how difficult it is to maintain that when I'm in central London. So it's I don't know, conceptually at least, it's the same Beth. It's the same set of faculties if I'm in the caves in Spain or in central London or in a monastery. And yet there is a difference in the mindfulness. And so what's happening there? I think I'm not the only one who has that kind of experience. And so what's happening there?
If I'm giving a very mundane answer, it's like noise, distractions, sensory things that come that grab us. And I don't have enough time to sit. Coffee. Like it's very kind of mundane, but just it's like it's a feeling almost rather than a I'm giving you examples, but the feeling is like freneticness, like is the opposite, like crazy unsettled energy that the world's so good at pulling me into.
Yes, environment, support, and intention, right, are what's being valued. So those things change usually when we step outside into central London. Just for example, what is the environment like? What's being valued by everybody around us, and where is the support, or what's being supported, and where what energy, what's being fed energetically, wholesome or unwholesome things usually. So
Does anybody else have a similar or different experience? Yeah, Evelyn.
The last time we talked, at one point you mentioned to pay attention to what my mind was focusing on, where I was placing my attention. And I think that's a huge part of, I guess, what helps me connect with these mental factors and when I lose it. And really committing to paying attention to the right things or helpful things helps me stay connected. And just as an example, maybe I'll have a dream when I'm lucid, or sitting practice where, in the dream, I look down and I realize there's no body in the dream. Or in the practice, I feel the dissolution of the body. But then as soon as I'm awake in real life, or as soon as I'm not meditating anymore, I realize I go back to the habitual tendencies of identifying with my bodily form. So if I'm sick, I become anxious that, the body is not in a state of healthiness. And then I've just been reflecting on that and wondering why it is like I've put this box, where in my mind, I'm like, okay, meditation is only when I'm still, and when I'm practicing, I'm trying to identify with something else. And then sort of the rest of the time, I'm back to these habitual, just like habits of the mind.
Yeah, that's the question. That's the question. Which contexts help us to pay wise attention, and which contexts don't? When Aaron shared, he talked a lot about the noisiness and the freneticness, contexts where our tranquility is compromised. Sometimes it amazes me how much my mind will fall into wholesome states just as soon as there's a bit of quiet. As soon as there's a bit of quiet. But then if we think about all of the ways that we propagate noisiness in the world,
I have a bit of a concern about this, which I always thought, like, if I could get better at this, then I would be able to deal with like noise, because I can't just like go and isolate it all the time, and I want to like do things and interact with people. So like, I don't know. I guess it's a balance, but I've always resisted the thought of like, oh, I just need to, you know, have a more quiet environment or something. Because then I'm like, well, that's not where I want to go in my life.
Has anybody ever heard this saying? This is fairly new to me though, too. It's hear it to clear it.
Haven't heard that before. That's kind of cute that it rhymes. What does it mean?
Well, I guess my understanding of it is, at least in my experience early on in my practice, became, almost hypersensitive to stimuli, right? Even just meditating and hearing cars go by, and then noticing the aversion, right? And then it's almost like a formal meditation practice. A lot of times is conditioning us to only have like meditative benefits if we have the container of kind of a perfect environment, or an ideal environment for meditation. So it's almost like the more we do that, the more we're conditioned, possibly, now I could be wrong, please jump in here, to have the benefits of meditation in an ideal condition. So I don't know if that's logical or that plays out. That's just what I'm. So now the hear it to clear it, it's more kind of like we're bringing a perception. I wonder if this could be, I don't know if this is skillful, and how skillful it is, but instead of perceiving a noise or a sound as an obtrusion into our experience, what if we were to flip that perception and say, okay, what we hear is actually whatever needs to be cleared out of our experience. It's kind of more like a willful process. So if we hear something, we're clearing, I don't know, our aversion to it, any maybe unwholesome qualities, unskillful qualities, unwise qualities that the mind might associate with this loud sound. So when hear it to clear, if that brings to mind a perception of clearing instead of intrusion, right? So I don't know if anybody's following me here. So it's kind of like bringing a willful perception as a temporary antidote to any kind of ill that we're experiencing with sounds. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think it's a very useful framing that we don't develop aversion to disturbances or defilements, because then we start a negative cycle and it snowballs. So not only is there a sound, but then we hate the sound, and then we feel guilty for hating it, and then we're frustrated, then we think we're getting nowhere, then we think, oh God, I'm a hopeless meditator, and so on and so on. And so we want to bring, as I see Evelyn smiling like she knows that one. I'm pleased I'm not alone in that. So there's definitely skill in finding ways to bring acceptance to states when they arise. I thought Kendall's point though was really poignant, which is this question of, yeah, we want to deepen our practice, but we don't want it to be at the expense of our engagement with the world. Have I summed that up for you accurately there, Kendall? Yeah. And sometimes I think of this a bit like the child that's learning to walk. And we learn to walk because we want to be able to walk places and walk down busy streets and cross the road. But when there's a child learning to walk, we don't want to put them in the middle of a busy street, because they won't get very far and they might get hurt. But then the frustrating thing is, in this day and age, it's not just a busy street, it's like a treacherous motorway or something like that. And it takes a long time for us to get up on our feet. And then we venture out into the world and whew, we've been hit by a truck and then both our legs are broken. And then we got to pick ourselves back up again. But I think the aim of the practice is to be able to engage with life wholeheartedly. And we have no gentle context to train in. We have no nursery. We've got really quite polarized, especially in the West, where you're either on retreat or you're out there fending for yourself. And so many meditators experience deepen in their practice, and then their practice collapses, and then they deepen their practice in retreat again, and then their practice collapses. And I'm interested in finding ways to bridge that so that we don't have to have this dilemma that Kendall is speaking to.
This brings up the idea of fear, and that's been a popular topic of Dharma talks here recently. And I think it's so important because fear seems to underlie so much of this when we're, it's, yeah, it's pretty obvious. And then, I think Sam Vega here, Beth is bringing up this spiritual urgency here because it really is. Or is it, is this really important to us to break out of this loop of deepening practice and then having that go away and then getting distraught and then buckling down again and relooping the cycle over and over. So, it's kind of like we get used to that cycle maybe, I don't know. So what's going to, how can we penetrate into that to start to break that apart, right? And towards more of the deep end or deepening of it.
Beth, when you were talking, I it really reminded me of like just now coming back from the retreat, like because my experience was like, I kind of gained this peace or this like more clarity, or I spent a month on a meditation retreat, and I came home and I really wanted to like carry that momentum into my daily life and like have like things I could do mindfully and be just like kind of sneak in like right speech where I could and be as mindful as possible. And I found that and I was interacting with like my partner, and I had some conversations with my parents. It wasn't like I was like going back to work or seeing a bunch of people, but just like that kind of shift in how I was behaving was enough for them to feel like I was like pushing them away, or like this was like a potential barrier to like my relationship with them. And like my mother and my partner have both expressed since I got back that they're afraid of moving to meditation, and just like that, and feeling like there was like an expectation of me behaving in a certain way, like it just subtly kind of shifted my momentum away from like trying to like kind of bring practice into my daily life and more into like maintaining relationships. And not that those relationships are like diametrically opposed to like me having a meditation practice, but it's tricky to change my behavior because there's expectations from people I know and love about my behavior. And those expectations like are very, they're not only like inside my own head, like they're also like they kind of like shape my behavior in like very real ways. And it's like really difficult to like return from retreat and kind of try to hold on to some of the retreat around people who know me, because there's just like there's something different about you. Yeah, and I think also that like these relationships are important, because if I was just alone all the time, if I'm not in retreat, like that also isn't like there's a balance there that is really hard to find. I don't know. Yeah, that was just my thought.
Thanks for sharing. I'm curious to know if anybody else has had a similar experience coming off retreat. I know I have.
I have coming home from college, summer break, coming home.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what I heard a lot there was how the relational aspect was impacting you, how you feel the weight of the expectations of others. And since I disrobed, I think I felt the same thing on a grander scale. The expectations of people I've never met, but just society at large to, I don't know, turn up to a job interview wearing a certain thing. Or have money, little things, but somehow it impacts their sense of priorities, or it impacts their sureness in dedicating time to meditation and to Dharma. That other people's expectations are pulling in a different direction.
I'll just say real briefly that this is fascinating to me because I kind of had the opposite experience where my behavior was actually so appalling and the stuff I was going through that when I did start a meditation practice, I was encouraged to keep it up, and people were just amazed at how much I changed. So, yeah, so but I have gotten around to this thing too as well. What was just mentioned, and it's interesting, both sides of this coin. Yes, it's such an opportunity. Can we look at this as an opportunity for practice? And it's cool that Beth teaches this relational aspect of it as too, because that's a deep, profound part of our practice. And right, everything in life is relational as well. Relation to our thoughts, relations to how we interact on the computer and with people and whatnot. And it's so fascinating to hear all this stuff.
Zoom. The word that is coming to mind again and again as I hear these shares is community. Sangha, in whatever authentic form that can be, and where the relational stuff isn't pulling against us and the cultural values aren't pulling against us, and where there can be a full engagement with life and with people, but somehow we're all pulling in the same direction, we're valuing the same things. I've been amazed at how difficult it is to create community in the West. Such a deeply individualized way of living that we've all gotten used to. Very loose community, yeah, maybe like showing up on Zoom once a month. That level of community we can do, but like living together, whew, very difficult. I think I'll just take one or two more comments if there are any, and then we can have another 10-15 minutes meditation just for digesting time. I'm going to close with a call for action. I like to close with things that we can actually take away.
So we're not going to go back to the reading.
You want me to actually read it again, or you want to speak about it?
Oh, I don't think we should read it again. No.
What do you want to say about it?
Oh, no. I'll just see if anybody else has any comments first. You know what? I changed my mind. I don't feel it's that important right now. So
I have a question. This is a little bit not relevant to what we've been talking about, but I've been very curious. In the last session, you said like that a lot of the deepest practitioners in the West are lay people. And I'm curious if you could just say more about that, or like, what are those people doing? Like, because I don't imagine it's just like working a crazy desk job and going to the bar after work every day, or something. Like I imagine that there's something in that could be elaborated on. So I'm just curious there.
Yeah, so I'll think of a few who are like very highly attained in their practice. One is a data analyst, or does some kind of, I don't know, computer work with numbers. I don't really know what it is. Another one is a cook. Another is caring for his elderly mother. Another is actually a lay Dharma teacher I'm friends with. some, I'm not sure what their profession is, but most have a job. But what they have in common is a contentment and a simplicity. So there is not really a heavy clinging or a striving for worldly things. They're very much engaging in their livelihood just for the means to keep on going. All of the lay people that I know who have practiced deeply make time each year for retreat, and all of them have very strong Brahmavihara practice. Very, very resilient in their metta and their compassion, and their rejoicing is like the currency that they deal in. And this is what is keeping their mind in wholesome states most of the time. So when they sit down to practice, it's easy for them to go deeper relatively quickly. What I found with Westerners who ordain, there are a few that it's really worked out well for them. And I loved monastic life, so I always want to recommend it. But there are many Westerners as well, when they ordain, they pick up a big cultural burden, and they spend way too much time worrying about how to be culturally sensitive, how to keep all of the rules, how to behave in the right way, how to act around the donors, how to sit correctly, how to wear their robes. And we will surely make mistakes because the Burmese people, they grew up in that. It's very natural to them. And we can't help but feel like we're, I don't know, letting down the side or something like that, standing out like a sore thumb. And so if we don't know how to carry that lightly, then it can create a lot of tension in the mind and make it difficult to relax into the practice. That, and then also the food and the weather and the physical conditions can sometimes be hard for the Westerners who ordain. And what I know of the monastic communities operating in the West, I don't really know any where meditation is really being practiced deeply to the level where somebody could attain Nibbana, for example. Maybe there are some, but I don't know them.
Beth, you cut out there where they could attain what? I'm sorry.
Nibbana. Of the monastic communities in the West, I don't know any that are teaching or practicing to that level. In Asia, there are many. So oh, it's 5:45 already. Okay, we'll do about 10 minutes meditation and then I'll ding. And we'll finish with, it's just to give you some prep time. I'm going to finish with a call to action, and the question will be, what one thing can we commit to doing to encourage these beautiful mental factors into our life? And I don't want the answer to be meditate every day. I want something else. Okay, let's get creative. So sit together for about 10 minutes. I'll finish with a ding. Ding. Okay, so I'm gonna start and then choose the next person, and then next person goes and choose the next person until we've done all 6. Keep it brief because we've only got 5 minutes, and I want to pass Aaron also to close. One way that I'm going to bring these beautiful states into my life is to commit to doing something generous that's a little bit outside of my comfort zone every day. And I will pass to Evelyn.
Listening more and talking less.
Who do you want to go next, Evelyn?
Gwen.
Balancing morality with softness. Josh.
So, again, the perceptional level, right? So every moment we have an opportunity for Dharma practice, people go on game shows and TV for challenges, right? For frivolous things, but we have that opportunity every moment for our practice. So if we're not already experiencing these beautiful mental qualities in our everyday experience, we can ask, how might I view this situation differently to cultivate mental qualities, or to how can I see this situation in a way where I can see these mental qualities, beautiful mental qualities, and then our response, we can ask, well, how might I respond to this situation that helps further cultivate beautiful mental qualities? And real quick, I'll put my I changed my mind somewhat again, but I'll put those in the chat about the reading. So Aaron, go ahead.
I want to not look at my phone until after breakfast.
Nice one.
Yeah.
And Kendall.
Thinking hard here. I'm thinking maybe trying to think if this is actually like promoting the mental qualities or not. Like I was thinking asking questions during Zoom calls. I think that is helpful because it makes me more aware of my mental state, maybe because I have to share a little more with people. So that'll be mine.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. The Buddha said that the proximate cause for wisdom is asking questions. So if we want to be wise in the future, then we need to ask many questions now. So this is very much for the increasing of our beautiful mental factors, being curious about the Dharma. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Josh, I see your questions. I don't have time for them now, but if you're joining our one-day retreat on the 20th, please ask them at that time. Put them in the Q&A.
Didn't even think they might have answers, but yeah, it seems like you have something to weigh in there. So yeah, I might take you up on that. We'll see.
I don't know how the Earth appeared on the water. Like, I'm not a, I don't know, marine biologist, but
I would think.
but anyway, you can ask the questions. They're interesting. Okay, I'll pass to Aaron close.
Great. Yeah, we'll just I'll say one little thing. So yeah, thanks for coming. A little but great little session. It's also our last one with Beth, at least for now. But I want to invite you to the extent that you're able to, if you're a person with resources, either give to Beth or give to Dharma Gates some kind of token of what this time meant, and along the lines of bringing Dharma practice into the world is also bringing a sort of reflection of how much it's worth to us, to the folks who are committing themselves to doing this kind of thing. So encourage you to make some kind of donation if you can, and if you're not a person with resources, then don't do that, and donate your time, donate your energy to the practice instead. And yeah, it'd be great to see anybody at future events. If you have any questions about Dharma Gates, I might hang out for a minute or two after. And thanks to you all for coming. That's all I got.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks again to Aaron for hosting these events. I hadn't heard of Dharma Gates and they contacted me, and I'm so grateful when I see these Dharma run organizations in the world. It's beautiful. So if you didn't already take a look at the work they're doing, it's really it's very on point with what I value. And yeah, like you said, if you can support them in any way, it'll be great. I can't stay for a few minutes because I'm at work and my break is over. So yeah, I'll see you all maybe at some other event. Lovely to spend the time with you all. Bye for now.
Bye, Beth. Take care.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Aaron, and everybody. It was nice meeting you guys.
Take care, all.
Likewise.